Part 64. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 631. I am really looking forward to it. The little empress who has been trained by all the masters in the world will surely become a stunning figure in the future. Xiejin turned his head to look at Chen 11, does your highness feel a sense of crisis? Chen 11 said seriously, I already know how to protect the country of Dongling, so I don't feel a sense of crisis. Xiejin was surprised, Your Highness, tell me. Not only was he curious, more than a dozen pairs of eyes in the hall fell on the little prince, and their eyes were full of interest. Xian Yuanyao said, It seems that your highness has already understood the way to govern the country, and the emperor has taught well. Xian Yuanhao smiled but said nothing. First, continue to strengthen the military and national strength. Second, when the princess cousin grows up and becomes the empress, I can send her more beautiful boys to promote friendly diplomatic relations and harmonious coexistence between the two countries. After the voice fell, the hall fell into silence for a moment. Then someone burst out laughing, and everyone looked over. Sure enough, it was Miss Lulu again. Your Highness, you are so bold. This method really works. If any country wants to have a good relationship with Her Majesty, they can just pick a few beautiful boys and send them over every year. It will ensure that peace can be maintained for 100 years. Rongzhan frowned and looked at her. But the quality of the beautiful boys must be very good. You can't just pick a few people to make up the number. Lulu pretended to wipe her neck, otherwise, if Her Majesty is unhappy, she will kill one with a knife, which is not very wonderful. Chenxi nodded, I know. Xian Yuanhao wiped his face and couldn't help laughing and scolding, you haven't ascended the throne yet, and you're thinking about sending beauties to protect yourself. Can you have some ambition? Chenxi said seriously, Father, please report. The first point I just mentioned is to strengthen the army and national strength. This is the foundation of national stability. The second point is just to make the princess happy. Jinyu glanced at him and said in a baby voice, You can only be happy if you make me happy. Everyone started laughing again. Domineering. You have your mother's style. Dongju looked at her with a tangled expression, Aunt Lulu, then, will someone continue to send me beauties? Xian Yuanhao looked at his daughter in astonishment, and Fu Dange was also confused. The couple looked at each other, and they didn't expect that their children would start to love beauty at such a young age. Lulu was stunned, Zuzu, do you like beauties too? Dongju nodded, I like Aunt Lulu, and I also like beauties like Aunt Empress, as well as my grandmother and mother, I like them all. Sure enough, she is a sweet-mouthed girl. One sentence made all the women present happy. Chu Qinghuang sat on one side, holding a teacup in her hand, and her usually indifferent face was now replaced by a soft smile. Probably no one can resist such a happy atmosphere at this time, the whole family is together, brothers and sisters, daughters-in-law and sons-in-law, grandchildren around their knees, all of them are smart and clever. After a trip in the world, you have seen prosperity, endured pain, faced crises, and experienced the glory of the prosperous times. When everything settles down, return to a quiet and peaceful life. Putting down the teacup, Chu Qinghuang reached out and held Fu Kang's hand beside him, and tilted his head to look at him, should we sneak out? Fu Kang glanced at everyone present calmly, thinking that the word sneak out was not used well. Even if they had the ability to fly and escape, they could not sneak out in front of so many people. But it doesn't matter, whether it's sneaking out or walking openly, as long as you can get out. Okay, Fu Kang responded and stood up first. Then everyone's eyes instantly moved from the child to Fu Kang. Under the pressure of everyone's attention, Fu Kang said, Jin Yu will be lent to the master for a long time, and I will go out with Nuan Nuan. After the words fell, before anyone else could speak, Chu Qinghuang had already taken his hand and turned around and walked out. Lend the child to the master for half a day. Xiejin raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Rong Yu. Could it be that this is the inheritance of the master's family, and they all like to lend children to others? They still clearly remember that when the emperor was a child, the master also lent the little prince to them to take out of the palace to play. It was called lending, but in fact it was to let them be the child's wet nurse. Fortunately, being able to lend a child represents trust, and it is absolute trust. After all, this is the flesh and blood of one's heart. Speaking of inheritance, Xian Yuanhao thought, father only loves mother in his life, and I only like Dan Ji. My sister was taken away by a wolf cub, and it seems that she will not change her heart for the time being, so I wonder, who is Jin Yu's nature of collecting beauties like? This question is a good question. No one present could answer it. Xiejin was calm. It's hard to say. My father is a playboy by nature. I will still guard one person all my life. Xian Yuanyao looked at him calmly. Guarding one person all my life, is it unfair to you? How can it be unfair? I am so happy. Xiejin hurriedly expressed his loyalty. This proves that there is someone worth guarding for my whole life. Don't look at the little princess saying that she likes to collect beauties now. If she meets someone she really likes when she grows up, she may give up the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards for this. Okay, Rongzhan frowned tightly. Uncle Jin and Uncle Yao are so old, can you restrain yourself a little in front of us young people? Xian Yuanyao sighed and picked up the teacup to drink tea. Fu Kang still calls master. Xian Yuanhao turned his head to look at Rong Yu and Nan 11, didn't mother ask him to change his words? Could it be that he still hasn't received the approval of his father and mother? How did he hear that his mother was very satisfied with the son-in-law? I guess he probably doesn't dare. Rongzhan sat on the chair, unable to resist the urge to relax his sitting posture, but afraid of being called lazy by his father, he tried to maintain a serious sitting posture. Who could have expected a few years ago that my sister would turn an obedient wolf cub into a husband? Nan 11 said, I changed my name once, but probably because the master's pressure was too strong, I changed it again soon. Rongzhan touched his nose. His father's pressure was indeed too strong. Grandfather is very good, handsome, and powerful. Jin Yu sat in his arms and started playing with his hair again. I will be more powerful than my grandfather when I grow up. Yes. Another little fangirl who was conquered by the charm of the master appeared. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 632. Chu Qinghuang and Fu Kang left the main hall and walked along the deserted mountains. Quietly feeling the fresh and vast breath of the mountains, Fu Kang held Chu Qinghuang's hand tightly and said thoughtfully, Master is planning to train the world's #1 empress. I didn't expect my father to make this decision. Chu Qinghuang frowned. The 3 of us brothers and sisters were all taught by our father himself. Although my brother also invited a tutor when he was studying, he was trained according to the normal standards of the emperor and never invested so much. It may be because of the love between generations. Fu Kang guessed. Master prefers Jin Yu. Maybe he saw that Jin Yu has the characteristics of an empress, and he is worried that the skills she has when she grows up are not enough to deal with the crisis-ridden situation, so he wants to focus on training her. Crisis-ridden. Chu Qinghuang nodded. Yes, the imperial power has always been treacherous and dangerous. Even if the world is now more peaceful and stable than ever before, no one dares to guarantee that it will still be so peaceful and prosperous in 20 years. When it comes to educating children, my father has only believed in one truth in his life. Strong skills are always the basis for one's life, regardless of gender. A man with a skill can be proud of the world, and a woman with strong skills can also do what she wants without being controlled and constrained by others. Strong skills can also make people full of confidence, with extraordinary bearing and courage, and they don't have to be submissive and indecisive at any time. Such truths are most perfectly reflected in the 3 children, and for the grandchildren, Rong Yu certainly wants to give them the best within his ability. Now Xian Yuanhao is the emperor of Dongling, Rong Zhan is in charge of hundreds of thousands of troops, and Chu Qinghuang is in charge of Ziki. Everyone is busy with government affairs. He, the grandfather who abdicated long ago, is the most suitable candidate. The world is so big, and he has taken Nan 11 to see a lot of mountains, rivers, and lakes in various places. He has seen all the scenery he should see. He originally planned to stay in Kangyun Mountain for a few years. Now the time is just right to train his little granddaughter. Chu Qinghuang tilted her head to look at Fu Kang. Do you feel reluctant to leave? Fu Kang nodded. I am reluctant, but master is right. What do you mean? Fu Kang's eyes fell into the distance, the rolling mountains blocked his sight, and his voice sounded a little more concerned than before. We only have Jinyu as a daughter. Although Ziki has accepted the fact that you are the empress in these years, many ministers of the aristocratic families do not want to see the system of the empress in power continue. If Jinyu stays in the palace, what if someone has thoughts that they shouldn't have? Are you afraid that someone will attack Jinyu? Fu Kang nodded. There are countless conspiracies and intrigues under the imperial power. Who knows what the ministers who appear to be respectful and loyal are like in private? Even if Nuan has the ability to read minds, she can't see what everyone is thinking. What if someone outside the court has thoughts? So we have to be on guard. Jinyu is their baby, and no one can hurt her. Chu Qinghuang hummed, you make sense. Fu Kang sighed, with Jinyu, we have weaknesses. If something happens, even if we kill her, we still can't change the facts. Instead of that, it's better to keep her with the master. Chu Qinghuang looked at him quietly. What's wrong? Fu Kang smiled, am I wrong? Very right, Chu Qinghuang sighed, it's just that I suddenly found that you have changed a lot since then. Fu Kang was silent for a moment. Does Nuan like me like this? Of course. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows. Do you think I will always like the indifferent, taciturn, and ruthless appearance at the beginning? Once a person has 7 emotions and 6 desires, he will naturally change. If he has weaknesses, he will be more cautious. This is human nature. She can't always hope that he will always be indestructible. Fu Kang couldn't help but smile, and stretched out his hand to hold her waist, with a force that made her feel like she was being rubbed into his body. Although we can both live long in this life, I still greedily want more. Really? Fu Kang's eyes were burning. If we can meet in the next life, will Nuan still be willing to be with me? Indeed I am greedy. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyebrows. I want to change someone in the next life. Fu Kang pursed his lips, his expression a little unhappy. Unless you are still so strong and gentle, obedient, and cute in your next life, Chu Qinghuang continued, and you have to be good looking. Fu Kang pouted aggrievedly. What if I am not good looking? Then I will find someone good looking, Chu Qinghuang said. Maybe I will learn from Jinyu and build a golden palace to collect beauties from all over the world. At this point, she thought about it seriously. It feels good, even if I do nothing, just put them in front of me occasionally. It will be pleasing to the eye, right? Fu Kang's dissatisfaction intensified. Then I must become very powerful in my next life, so powerful that I can build a golden palace to hide Nuan first, so that you can't go out and see those handsome men, and you can only look at me every day. Chu Qinghuang raised an eyebrow. So domineering. Fu Kang was arrogant. Okay, Chu Qinghuang smiled, with a sly and playful look in her eyes. Who made me like your domineering attitude? Fu Kang frowned. So does Nuan like me to be more docile or more domineering? Chu Qinghuang pulled his ear. Are you picking on me? You are so bold. Fu Kang lowered his head and blocked her lips, directly proving with his actions whether he was bold or not. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 633. There are many people on the mountain, and Xianyuan Hao, Rongzhan, Chu Qinghuang, and Fukang are all adults, and each can find something suitable for him or her to do. Rongyu and Nan 11 were not interested in them and were only interested in coaxing their children. So in the next few days, everyone could only get together during meals. At other times, Fukang and Chu Qinghuang often went to the world of two, and Xianyuan Yao and Xiejin, an old couple, would compete in martial arts in the early morning. The valley is vast, and there is enough space for them to play to their heart's content. Occasionally, they can be seen sitting side by side on the top of the mountain watching the sunset. From adolescence to middle age, time has left more and more mature and stable traces on them, but their feelings are like fine wine that has been fermented for many years. As they grow older, they not only do not fade, but become stronger and stronger. Chinsi learns something from his grandfather every day. This child is similar to his father Huang when he was a child, with a young and mature temperament. However, because of the pain of being separated from him, Rongyu is much gentler to him than he was to Hao before. Jinyu just couldn't get out of her grandfather's arms all day long, while Dongju preferred to stick to her grandmother and always let her tell her stories. Each of the three children has their own temperament, and Rongyu and Nan 11 are happy to indulge them and try their best to satisfy all their preferences. The only one, Rongzhan, was chased all over the mountain by Lulu all day long. Logically speaking, Rongzhan was also a powerful general in Dongling, with hundreds of thousands of soldiers and horses in his hands. There was no way he could be defeated by a little girl. However, Miss Lulu is good at Qinggong and has powerful eyes. No matter which corner Rongzhan is hiding in, Lulu can see his location in time and find him accurately. Therefore, Xiejin also seriously joked about the war. Fortunately, all countries are in peace at the moment. If this really went to the battlefield, His Highness the War King's poor hiding skills may directly allow the enemy archers to shoot you into a sieve, leaving you without a leader. The soldiers under your command are miserable. Before Rongzhan could say anything, Lulu started to protect her husband. How can the enemy have such a powerful clairvoyance as me? Uncle Rongzhan marries me, and I will be his virtuous assistant. When the time comes, I can shoot the enemy general into a sieve. When Rongzhan heard the sentence, he thought it made sense, so he nodded subconsciously. That's right. A husband and a wife are married so soon? It's gratifying. It seems that we are not far away from getting married. Xiejin leaned on a cliff and sincerely suggested, I think the Lord will have to devote himself to raising his children and travel long distances back and forth. It's not easy, so I decided to hold the wedding here. Although it's a bit simple, the guests present are all heavyweights, so it's a great honor for you. Lulu nodded repeatedly. I agree. It didn't matter whether she gave her face or not, and it didn't even matter to the guests present. As long as Rongzhan agreed to marry her, and her father and mother were willing to officiate their wedding, it didn't matter whether there were others. What did you agree to? Rongzhan frowned. I haven't agreed yet. When will you agree? As Zhaner said, be careful your father gives you a whip. Nan 11 led Dongzhu over and said, since Miss Lulu is devoted to you, you should obey her and save me from worrying about you dying alone. Lulu came over and took Nan 11's hand enthusiastically. Mother, you are so kind, you are invincible, beautiful, and noble. What kind of flattery are you talking about? Rongzhan stretched out his hand to pull her over. This is my mother, not yours. Don't mistake her for her. Lulu held her mouth in grievance. Mother, Uncle Rongzhan bullied me. Nan 11 sighed. I will tell Rongyu later and ask his father to teach him a lesson. That's not okay. Lulu was startled and shook his head quickly. I'm just kidding, I must never let my father teach him a lesson. Nan 11 smiled seriously and said, it's okay, men are thick-skinned and rough-toned, and those who are disobedient should be punished from time to time. Besides, Rongzhan is so close to you but he doesn't want to take responsibility and keeps looking for excuses. He really deserves a beating. Mom, I'm just kidding, Lulu quickly said. Uncle Rongzhan didn't take advantage of me, it was me who took advantage of him. We didn't get overly intimate along the way. It was all my nonsense. Don't hit him, otherwise he will feel bad. By the end, I actually felt shy. Nan 11 laughed. Is it true that I didn't take advantage of you? No, really not. Shouldn't it be beaten? Lulu shook his head repeatedly. You can't fight, you can't fight, you must not fight. Rongzhan looked at the little girl's protective posture and couldn't help but sneer, but unexpectedly felt a little benefit in his heart. Well, a man is a child till the day he dies and needs a little care. He has received 2 strict teachings from his father since he was a child, which left a serious psychological shadow, so he urgently needs others to give him some care. Thinking of the gentleman's agreement between the two of them a few days ago, Rongzhan felt that marrying her would be a good choice, lest she get carried away and become someone's concubine. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 634. Not only Rongzhan remembers this agreement, but Lulu also remembers it clearly. If he was not attracted to her and unwilling to marry her before leaving Canyon Mountain, then they would part ways. Although Rongzhan casually agreed to marry her that night, after getting along with her for several consecutive days, Rongzhan's always ambiguous attitude still made Lulu feel unsure. Sometimes she would think quietly for a while and reflect on whether she was too domineering. I don't know how to be reserved. What if Rongzhan really doesn't like her? The twisted melon is not sweet. Since his father and mother were both on the mountain, he might not even dare to refuse openly, but if he really didn't like her in his heart, Lulu was actually not willing to force her into something difficult. Lulu walked alone in the mountains, looking at the vast mountains in the distance. He was quiet for a while, then walked to a huge rock and sat down. He raised his eyes slightly and looked at the beautiful scenery of the distant mountains shrouded in clouds and mist. He held his chin, the whole person seemed particularly quiet. If Rongzhan really didn't like her, maybe she should leave here earlier. What's wrong? Rongzhan came over and sat down next to her. You've been watching for so many days, haven't you seen enough scenery? The achievements of nature are really amazing. Lulu's eyes were filled with admiration and astonishment. The mountains are steep and continuous. How many years will it take for such a vast and majestic canyon mountain to be formed? Rongzhan didn't say anything, he just thought it was a bit silly for her to say this. Lulu suddenly said, I'm leaving. Walk. Rongzhan frowned, where to go? The world is so big, you can go everywhere, Lulu said melancholy, with a hint of worry in his eyes. A person with no worries can travel around the world to see all the different things in the world. Rongzhan looked at her in surprise. I bothered you these days. Lulu turned to look at him, a bit of apology on his face. I shouldn't have caused you too much trouble, and I shouldn't have forced you to do things you don't want to do. With that said, she stood up and bowed deeply to Rongzhan. I'm sorry. Rongzhan felt strange and coughed lightly. Actually, if you really like this place, you can ask your mother to adopt you as your adopted daughter, so that you can stay as long as you want. Lulu shook his head. This place can be regarded as a beautiful memory. After all, there are so many people in the world. How many of them are lucky enough to share the same table with the once famous Prince Regent and Her Majesty the Queen, and spend so many days together? How many others are there? Can I live with 2 emperors at the same time? I am satisfied and can enjoy it for the rest of my life. Rongzhan frowned but said nothing. Seeing him like this, Lulu's heart sank slightly and he breathed a sigh of relief. I'm going to pack my things and leave early tomorrow morning. Rongzhan followed her silently, saying nothing all the way. What's wrong? Lulu looked at him puzzled. Rongzhan scratched his nose. I think you can think about it again. Lulu said, What are you considering? Consider becoming my father's adopted daughter. Lulu smiled, I am just an orphan, how can I be as noble as my father and mother? Rongzhan felt a prick in his heart. He didn't know what was going on, but suddenly he felt like a distressed feeling, sour and astringent. Lulu's expression was free and easy, and he quickly recovered from his melancholy. Anyway, I'm glad to meet you. Uncle Rongzhan is the highest-ranking general and prince in Dongling. I have never been to the human world in this life. Rongzhan moved his lips but stopped talking. Lulu started to pack her clothes. In fact, there weren't many things. She brought few clothes when she came, so it didn't take much to pack them up. After simply sorting out the baggage, Lulu stood alone for a while, his eyes falling on the baggage as if in trance, not knowing what he was thinking. Not long after, she turned to look at Rongzhan, apologetically, I'm going to say goodbye to them. Thank them for their hospitality during this time. I apologize for disturbing them. Rongzhan said, my father and mother won't care, you don't have to apologize. It's my politeness to say sorry. It's the regent's generosity to not care. We can't be confused. Lulu shook his head and looked at him hesitantly, then, I'll go over first. Rongzhan watched her pass by, watched her walk out, and saw that she was really going towards the main hall. He quickly said in desperation, wait a minute. Lulu turned to look at him, is there anything else? Rongzhan cleared his throat unnaturally and walked towards her at the speed of a turtle. I thought about it carefully. Huh? Lulu was puzzled, what are you considering? Rongzhan looked up at the sky, looking at the place where the mountains and the sky meet in the distance. After thinking about it carefully, I am indeed not too young. Lulu said, oh. It's indeed time to get married. Rongzhan tried to make his voice sound calm and normal, if you don't mind, we can. Lulu stared at the flat ground under his toes, wondering if he heard clearly. Would you do that? Ah. Lulu looked up at him, what? Rongzhan's expression paused slightly and his brows slowly wrinkled, didn't you hear? Lulu apologized, I was thinking about something just now. Rongzhan raised his hand and wiped his face, I said that since the man is unmarried and the woman is unmarried, we can simply let our father and mother arrange the marriage for us. From now on, we will be a family. You can come to Canyon Mountain whenever you want. Lulu snorted, Canyon Mountain will belong to the little Empress of Ziki in the future. Not everyone can come if they want to. Isn't she still young now? Canyon Mountain is not hers yet, Rongzhan said, then frowned, it doesn't matter who belongs to Canyon Mountain, what matters is whether you are willing to do it or not. Lulu blinked, what are you willing to do? Rongzhan couldn't help but wiped his face again, are you willing to marry me? Lulu began to rehash old scores, but you said you don't like me, you don't want to get married to me, and you said you have nothing to do with me. I do. Rongzhan's tone was concise and clear, didn't I tell you that I was willing that night? What night? On the night you said, you were going to be someone's 18th room concubine. Oh, I thought you were fooling me. Lulu curled his lips, you have been denying our relationship for the past 2 days, and you also said that I was talking nonsense. Rongzhan sighed, I'm talking nonsense. You also said dash. None of what I said counts. Rongzhan interrupted her, what I said before today doesn't count. What I say from today onwards is the truth. Lulu paused and said oh. Rongzhan looked at her nervously, where's your answer? I don't have an answer. Lulu turned his head and looked at the mountains. He was obviously happy in his heart, but he had a calm look on his face. You should think about it again. There is no need to rush into it just because I want to leave. Decisions should not be made impulsively when it comes to important matters in life. I'm not impulsive, Rongzhan said seriously, I made it after careful consideration. But I'm so young, Lulu pouted, wouldn't it be a disadvantage to follow you? Rongzhan's expression froze slightly, didn't you say you just like me like this? But what you said before today doesn't count, so what I said before today doesn't count either. Lulu said, what you say after today is the truth. Wrong, Jean. Is this a goblin sent by God to torture him? I was wrong. Okay, wrong. Jean frowned. I will definitely like you from now on, and I will never repeat my words again. I promise to be good to you for the rest of my life, okay? Lulu snorted, then I'll think about it. Wrong. Jean was tall and straight, full of momentum gained from years of experience in the military camp. Standing in front of her, he could lift her up with one hand, but he still had to coax her patiently. You want to? How long do you think about it? Are you in a hurry? Wrong. Jean nodded, it's urgent. My sister is going back to Ziki this month, and the emperor's brother and his wife are also going back to Dongling. They are all gone, and there are even fewer people to witness our wedding. After a pause, if I am punished by my father, there won't even be anyone to intercede. Why did your father punish you so well? Lulu blurted out, and it took him a moment to realize that he had made another slip of the tongue. I mean, why did your father punish you so well? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 635. Wrong. Jean couldn't help but raise his lips. Father, do you need a reason for punishment? Lulu frowned. Father is not a domineering and unreasonable person. Don't be too big or too small. Wrong. Jean muttered, even though he is much younger than me, he always speaks in a lecturing tone. I don't know what habit he has developed. I'm 28 years old. Go ahead and lie to a ghost. Wrong. Jean reached out and pinched her cheek. Her skin was so pink that she looked like a girl. How dare you say you are 28? I've told you so many times. 28 years old refers to 16 years old, not 28 years old. I really don't know what is in your mind. Lulu looked up at him, with a bit of suspicion in his eyes. Do you really want to marry me? Nonsense. Wrong. Jean didn't know where his confidence came from, and he was full of arrogance. Can I still lie to you? What good will it do me to lie to you? Maybe you just want to taste my little fairy grass. Wrong. Jean sneered, as the only younger brother of Emperor Dongling, I enjoy the title of first-class prince. I have countless maids in the palace. I have the power of 400,000 soldiers and horses. There are as many women in the entire imperial capital who want to marry me as there are crucian carp crossing the river. I need to lie to you about this bean sprout. You are the bean sprouts. Wrong. Jean said helplessly, okay, I'm bean sprout. Lulu sneered, since there are so many women waiting to marry you, then just go and marry them. Wrong. Jean said confidently, I don't like them. Then you like me? Of course. Wrong. Jean nodded without thinking, why would I marry you if I don't like you? Just leave me at home and beat you 3 times a day. If you dare to hit me, I'll tell my father. Lulu snorted coldly, but the corners of his mouth turned up suspiciously. For the sake of you liking me, I won't argue with you, so I agreed to it. Bar. Wrong. Jean looked at her silently, are you sure? Sure. A trace of doubt appeared in Wrong Jean's eyes. Lulu, let me ask you something. Explain. Are you trying to trick me on purpose? Lulu frowned, who set a trap for you? Do you want to marry or not? Wrong. Jean stopped his anger instantly, marry. Forget it, the sages say that it is difficult to care for a villain and a woman, so he was just bored, so he competed with her like this. Wrong. Jean did as he said, since you agree, I will ask my mother to help you prepare wedding clothes. Lulu hesitated for a while. I heard that the wedding dress is prepared by the women themselves, and they need to embroider it by themselves, stitch by stitch. I am so stupid, I definitely can't embroider it. I expect you to embroider a wedding dress. Wrong. Jean snorted and mocked mercilessly, I'm afraid you won't be able to get married until you are 80 years old. Lulu gritted his teeth, what did you say? Wrong. Jean rubbed her head and said, okay, come with me to see my father and mother. Let the brother and sister wait a few days before leaving. We can arrange the wedding as soon as possible. Lulu was a very bold girl. She had been chasing after Rongzhan all day long, clamoring to marry him, but she had never been shy. Now she was really going to meet her father and mother-in-law to formally discuss the marriage. Suddenly still a little nervous. But Rongzhan didn't care whether she was nervous or not. He took her hand and forced her to see her parents. Several people in the hall seemed to have arrived a long time ago. They were all sitting there. As soon as Rongzhan entered, they received 7 or 8 pairs of calm eyes. Even Jinyu raised her head from her grandfather's arms and gave her second uncle a close look of contempt. It seems good things are coming soon. Xiejin held the teacup. Are we going to stay and have the wedding wine before leaving? Not only do we need to have a wedding banquet, but we also need to prepare some money. Xian Yuanhao turned his head and looked at him. Have Uncle Jin and Uncle Yao decided what to give? Xiejin calmly said, Don't worry, Your Majesty, we have already prepared. Before Uncle Jin came to Kangyun Mountain, he probably didn't expect that I would get married in advance, right? Rongzhan was suspicious. The gift is ready so soon? Why didn't I see it? The things I prepare are unique, so you don't need to worry about it, and you don't need to know it in advance. Rongzhan looked at him, very suspicious of what he had prepared. Xiejin and I should be able to give one together. Xian Yuanyao asked for everyone's opinions. After all, a gift is a small thing, but completing a lifelong event is a big deal. Xian Yuanhao laughed. Why is Uncle Yao becoming more and more stingy? You have been with Uncle Jin for a long time, and have you learned to be diligent and thrifty in running a household? Your Majesty is not right. Xiejin Yu retorted. I have learned to be diligent and thrifty about housekeeping after being with Yao Yao for a long time. Yao Yao was always frugal when he was young. Every time he goes to my house for dinner, he is not allowed to be extravagant or wasteful. It has restricted me quite a lot these years. Xian Yuanhao smiled. Uncle Jin complains on his lips, but he actually enjoys it, doesn't he? As parents, shouldn't we prepare a richer gift for Rongzhan and Lulu? Nan 11 pondered, turning to look at Rong Yu. What do you think? Nan 11 spoke, but Rong Yu had never retorted before. Hearing this, he looked at Rongzhan. What do you want? Kane Xiejin said. Xian Yuanyao echoed, a bucket of rattan. Fukang coughed lightly. 1 bucket is a bit much, half a bucket is fine. My family, Fukang, is still kind-hearted. Chu Qinghuan clicked his tongue. Second brother, be nicer to Fukang in the future. Rongzhan's face turned dark. What kind of bad taste do you have? Do you like watching him get beaten so much? Okay, Nan 11 said to the rescue, don't bully Rongzhan anymore. Mom still loves me. Rongzhan walked over with Lulu and bowed respectfully. Father, mother, my son was not good before. He shouldn't resist feelings and marriage, let alone reject Lu. You are such a good girl, please ask your father and mother to make the decision for us to marry you. Nan 11's eyes fell on his face. Marriage is not a trivial matter. Have you seriously thought about it? Rongzhan nodded. I've thought about it. If he doesn't think about it, his wife will have to part ways with him. Maybe the next time we meet, she will become the 18-room concubine of an unknown old man. Nan 11 turned to look at Lulu. Lulu, have you thought clearly? I've thought about it. Back to my mother. Lulu nodded firmly. Looking at Uncle Rongzhan's sincere request for me to marry him, I reluctantly agreed. What does it mean to be reluctant? Rongzhan turned to glare at her with a dissatisfied expression. It should be called ecstatic. Lulu scoffed. Rongzhan is really ecstatic and can't even speak. Xiejin laughed. You are such a big man and you still let your elders worry about you all day long. He should be taught a lesson. Rongzhan took a deep breath and wanted Uncle Jin to go out and find a place to cool down. Wrong. He should reciprocate the courtesy and give Uncle Yao something, such as a washboard, a golden abacus, and leather whips and shackles. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 636. Rong Zhan took a deep breath and said, I would like to inform my father. Rong Yu raised his eyes slightly. Uncle Xiejin is an official of the Dongling court. He should be taught a lesson for such an unstable attitude. Rong Zhan said respectfully, I hope that my father will not hesitate to take action to let him know what it means to have a backer. Rong Zhan is very happy these 2 days. No one is allowed to bully him anymore, Rong Yu said, otherwise, the family law will serve you. Rong Zhan was almost moved to tears. His father finally made the decision for him. I suggest that you give the cane to Uncle Jin. Chu Qing Huang sat aside and said calmly, Uncle Jin seems to be too busy recently. He is either bullying Fukang or his second brother, so he should be given something to do. After saying that, he turned to look at Xian Yuanhao. After returning to Dongling this time, the emperor should ask Uncle Xie to work harder, and don't always think about bullying the juniors. Fukang Xiao whispered, I agree with Nuan. Rong Zhan echoed, I agree too. Xian Yuanyao sighed, Xiejin, you have made everyone angry. It's not to make people angry, but because I have good connections. Xiejin raised his eyes slightly, Yao Yao doesn't even support me. Xian Yuanyao shook his head, I can't hold it up. The whole family joins forces, there is a master suppressing them, and there is an emperor who needs their allegiance. How can he and Xiejin be rivals? Even if the Lord doesn't care about anything now, the emperor's order after returning can keep them busy until death. Xian Yuanhao's temperament was calmer after all. For the time being, let my father and mother get married, and the wedding ceremony will be simple. When we go back to Dongling, I will give you something more grand, including a phoenix crown, a harem, and 10 miles of red makeup. You can't miss any of them. What do you think? Rong Zhan nodded, Brother Huang still loves me the most. It's not too gross. Fu Dange smiled softly, the emperor indeed loves the war king the most. Chu Qing Huang raised her eyebrows, sister-in-law, aren't you jealous? Fu Dange nodded, occasionally, so when the war king got married, I also breathed a sigh of relief. In the future, I will have my own wife to pamper me, so I don't have to fight for the emperor with me. Rong Zhan let out a long sigh, just make fun of me and laugh as hard as you can. No. Lulu shook his hand, brother, sister-in-law, and sister are all happy for you. Nan 11 looked at their clasped hands and felt happy from the bottom of her heart. However, she felt a little guilty when she thought that the girl looked so young. Zhaner must compensate others well in the future. The wedding date will be on the 3rd day of March. Rong Yu made the decision and looked at Lulu. Before the 3rd day of March, Miss Lu will have the opportunity to regret at any time. Regret? Rong Zhan's expression changed. What did your father say? Lulu has always dreamed of marrying me, how could he go back on his word? Rong Yu glanced at him, his eyes slightly subtle. Lulu smiled quietly. Today is a good day. In front of so many people, she will definitely not talk back to him. It's good for you and everyone. What's more, after getting married, he will be her husband, and she must save face for him in front of outsiders. The matter has been settled. Nan 11 thought for a while, Kangyun Mountain has everything that should be available. Tomorrow we will ask someone to buy some things for the wedding. It is too late to sew the wedding dress now, and we will go there temporarily. Buy some clothes and let your royal brother and sister-in-law take care of it for you once we get back to Dongling. Rong Zhan is the only first-class prince of Dongling's generation. If he wants to marry a wife, the princess's wedding dress must be made of the best materials in the palace. It is impossible to buy it outside. A wedding dress needs to be embroidered by a top-notch embroiderer. Months, time is also a cost. The phoenix crown, siape, jade pendant, head, and face, let Danji take care of it for you. Dange smiled softly, don't worry, mother, the emperor and I will make it smooth for them. Lulu frowned. She actually wanted to say that there was no need to be too extravagant and that it would be a simple formality. However, when a prince of the royal family married a wife, there should be strict rules and procedures. She might be considered ignorant if she refused without permission. So she just listened quietly, trying not to interrupt as much as possible. Next, Rongyu and Nan 11 discussed the matter of getting married, and Nan 11 ordered someone to take away several sets of jewelry she had collected. My mother doesn't need to spend any money. Rongzhan stopped her quickly. When I get back to Dongling, my son will prepare more for her, and my mother's jewelry will be kept for herself. When my mother was a queen when she was young, the jewelry she collected were of the highest quality, and Rongzhan didn't dare to ask for them. Nan 11 smiled and said, the ones I collected are all young styles, suitable for little girls. They are just sitting there in vain, so why not give them to Lulu? Rongyu said, I'll keep it for you. Rongzhan nodded, thank you, mother. Lulu followed and said, thank you, mother. Nan 11 has a lot of jewelry, most of which she has never worn before. Rongyu gave her a lot of various phoenix crowns, hairpins, and walking sticks. There was even a luxurious jewelry pavilion in Dazhu that Rongyu gave to Nan 11. Gift. She was generous with her money, but Lulu was not greedy. She only picked out a few pieces in colors and styles that suited her, and left out the rest. I usually don't like to wear too many headwear. I feel tired. I just need a ceremony when I get married. Thank you, mother relative. Nan 11 heard that she was telling the truth, so she didn't force herself anymore. One of the other two women present was a queen, and the other was a queen. The most indispensable thing on weekdays was jewelry, so Nan 11 didn't ask them if they wanted it. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 637. Although there were fewer people watching the wedding ceremony and the procedures were not as comprehensive as in the imperial city, everything was there. On the second day of March, Chu Qinghuang took Lulu down the mountain and rented the best inn in the city. The next morning, she finished dressing up in the inn's tianzi-shaped room. Her wedding dress was as bright as fire, and her phoenix crown was noble and luxurious. She looked really dazzling. Second sister-in-law is very beautiful today. Chu Qinghuang looked at the woman in front of her who was younger than herself. Except for her age, everything else is good, especially her unique vision. Even if you fall into the lake, you can let your second brother rescue you. Lulu stared at herself in the mirror with her beautiful eyes. She was wearing a phoenix crown and a bridal robe. She felt completely different from her previous plain self, like a different person. I also think I am good in every aspect. I am pretty and kind-hearted. I am still young, so I am able to let this old cow eat tender grass. Lulu held her cheek, like a dreamy beauty. It is really a blessing for Rongzhan to marry me in his previous life. Chu Qinghuang's mouth twitched, and she was really convinced by this little sister-in-law. The masters on Kangyun Mountain were all dressed in green robes today, with the red silk wrapped around their chests, carrying an 8-person sedan chair, and came to pick up the bride with joyful steps. Chu Qinghuang looked through the window at the bustling scene on the long street and smiled faintly. Although holding a wedding on the mountain is not as complicated and grand as in the imperial city, you are the first person in history to let these masters on Kangyun Mountain carry your sedan chair. Rong Lulu once again displayed her unparalleled supernatural power. When my mother got married, it was much more glorious than this. At that time, the sedan chair was carried all the way from Kangyun Mountain to the Great Zhou Imperial City. Not only were the people carrying the sedan chair masters, but the escorts were also top masters. Chu Qinghuang nodded slowly. Okay, you are the second one. The second one is enough for me to brag about for the rest of my life. Lulu smiled. Sister, do you want to know the story of my father and mother? Chu Qinghuang's eyebrows moved slightly. You know everything. Lulu pondered. Not all. Things that have passed too long can only be vaguely seen, and things in the future are not known. I can see everything so clearly, but I can see some important events in my life more clearly, because trivial things only depend on people, and the direction of major events depends on heaven. As he said, he explained in more detail, as if he was afraid that Chu Qinghuang didn't understand. For example, what my sister wants to eat and wear today, where to go with the emperor, and what banquets and activities she attended. These are all things she decides, and they may change at any time. I definitely can't see them. What I saw was when Her Majesty the Queen ascended the throne and when she encountered a disaster. This is just an analogy. Her Majesty's disaster has passed, and there will be no more disasters in this life. How long the lifespan is, these can all be seen. Chu Qinghuang hummed. I understand what you mean, there is no need to explain it in too much detail. She is not a 3-year-old child, can she not understand what he said? Then do you want to know about my father and mother? Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment. Do you think I should know? This is nothing. Lulu raised his head. Anyway, we have nothing to do now, so let's chat for a while. Chu Qinghuang hummed. My mother has actually been an empress for 2 lifetimes. Chu Qinghuang was slightly surprised. 2 lifetimes? Yes, Lulu nodded. My father and my mother have experienced 2 lifetimes of marriage, so my father has an obsession with my mother. Don't look at how gentle my mother is now, without ambitions, and living without desires. In fact, my father has lived for my mother in both lifetimes. Chu Qinghuang was silent. My father's obsession with my mother is indeed so obsessive that many people are puzzled. After all, in the eyes of the powerful, my father is a man who is powerful enough to be the common ruler of the world at any time, but in his heart, the supreme position of the common ruler of the world and the praises in the history books that have been passed down through the ages are not as good as his feelings for his wife. As children, no one would think that there is anything wrong with the good relationship between parents. After all, who doesn't like a harmonious family, loving husband and wife, and filial piety? Besides, the love that the king has for my mother is not the romantic tenderness of the literati, but a strong protection. From the beginning to now, for more than 30 years, he has never let my mother face the slightest risk. This kind of layout that protects every aspect to the extreme is definitely not something that a person who indulges in romance can do. I admire my father and I like my mother. Lulu's eyes were full of longing. They are the most suitable people in the world. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes and was about to say something when a woman came in from outside and said respectfully, Miss, the young master outside said that the auspicious time has arrived, and you should get up and get into the sedan immediately. According to etiquette, the bride should be carried out by her brothers and sit in the sedan without touching the ground, but Lulu has no brothers or relatives. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyebrows and asked for her advice. Do you want to be carried or hugged? Lulu raised her eyes. Sister, carry me. Chu Qinghuang nodded. It's okay to hug. Lulu was shy for a moment, then hug. Chu Qinghuang nodded and picked her up horizontally. Let's go, I'm your temporary in-laws today. Lulu leaned on her shoulder obediently. I have no regrets in my life to be hugged by Her Majesty the Queen once. What nonsense are you talking about? Chu Qinghuang easily picked up the future second sister-in-law. Growing old with my second brother is the thing that makes you regretless in your life, everything else is trivial. Sister, you are right. Lulu nodded, but sister and brother-in-law are already happy people. If sister carries her into the bridal sedan, Rongzhan and I will also be happy people in the future. Chu Ching Huang carried her into the sedan. There were crowds of people watching the excitement on both sides of the long street. Chu Ching Huang raised her hand and waved, and a subordinate came over to wait for instructions. Start scattering wedding money and peanuts and dates when the sedan is lifted up. Chu Ching Huang wanted to be a boy who distributed money today, scatter all the broken silver and copper coins exchanged yesterday, but we must maintain order to prevent trampling incidents and prevent people from bullying the market. We must prevent anyone from causing unhappiness because of silver. Yes. The sedan was lifted up, and the wedding procession began to set off. Along the way, there were 8 bridesmaids hired temporarily, wearing red clothes and carrying flower baskets with red dates, peanuts, and copper coins in the flower baskets. They scattered while walking, and the scene was particularly lively. Chu Ching Huang arranged people to maintain order. Even if the people caused some chaos by snatching silver and peanuts and dates, it would not cause much impact. Fireworks rang out, and gongs and drums were loud. The team went out of the city with music, and headed towards the Canyon Mountain in the suburbs. The bridesmaids stopped outside the city gate. Chu Ching Huang ordered people to give them generous rewards. Although the bridesmaids were puzzled that they did not send it to the groom's home, they still happily took the silver and thanked him profusely. The team continued to move forward until they arrived at the foot of Canyon Mountain. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 638. Rongzhan, dressed in a red wedding robe, was waiting at the foot of the mountain. When the sedan landed, he stepped forward, opened the curtain and looked at the bride sitting in the sedan. The corner of his mouth raised, "The beautiful girl is getting married today." Lulu sat in a dignified posture and looked at him quietly. When he saw him reaching out, he was about to get up and walk out, but saw Rongzhan directly reaching out and hugging her out. The bride's feet must not touch the ground. "It's just that you can't touch the ground before getting on the sedan chair," Lulu corrected. "I'm going to worship later. Do I have to hug him and worship him too?" "That's not true." Rongzhan hugged her easily without any effort. "When you get up the mountain and step on the red carpet, you can leave by yourself." Nan 11 originally wanted to have the red carpet rolled all the way down the mountain, but Rongzhan said that it was not necessary and that his wife could carry her up by herself, so she only laid it on the stone steps that were about to reach the main hall. Nan 11 naturally fulfilled his wish. So Rongzhan hugged his little wife and walked up the mountain path. Every step he took was like their future life. Whether it's because of the age gap or Rongzhan's temperament, if he marries this little wife in this life, he will pamper her and do everything he can to make her live a comfortable life. He will not be punished just because he is married. The restraint will only give her a few more family members who love her. Rongzhan Lulu nestled in his arms and looked at Rongzhan with joy. "I will love you forever." Rongzhan blushed and looked straight ahead. "Yeah. What are you?" Lulu pressed her cheek against his. "Will you also love me forever?" Although Rongzhan is gentle, handsome, and noble, and is not a big boss in the military camp, he has been a military commander for so many years and has been dealing with those brats in the military camp. He has never been close to women. How could he ever talk about love? When she was asked this question, she suddenly felt a little embarrassed. "This. Say it." Rongzhan coughed. "Yes." Lulu snorted. "I believe you." Rongzhan suddenly reacted and looked at her with a frown. "Can't you see our future?" Lulu's expression looked very natural. "Then I still want to hear it from you." Rongzhan didn't know what to say. Maybe this was the little girl's way of thinking. No matter how smart a woman is, she likes to be coaxed and sweet-talked. Okay, she likes to hear it, so he will try his best to satisfy her. After going up the mountain and onto the red carpet, Rongzhan put her down and took her hand into the main hall. The inside and outside of the palace were decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, and were hung with red silk. In the main hall, Rong Yu and Nan 11 were sitting at the main seats, watching quietly as Rongzhan and Lulu came together in red clothes, with young and bright faces full of vigor. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao sat on the left side, and Xian Yuanhao and Fu Dange sat on the right side. When the newcomers entered the hall, Xiejin stood up and acted as the master of ceremonies. The auspicious time has come, the newlyweds will pay their respects. Worship heaven and earth. 2 Thanks to Jiaotang. Couple greetings. The ceremony is completed and sent to the bridal chamber. After completing the simple marriage process, Rongzhan and Lulu were quickly sent to their new house. Nan 11 looked at the two people walking away with her lips slightly raised. Finally, Zhan's important life event has been completed. She used to worry that the child would grow old alone, but now she is relieved. Xian Yuanyao watched the newlyweds walk away with suspicion on his face. Miss Lu is really 28 years old. It is possible to be rejuvenated, Xiejin said in a leisurely tone, but if she can really achieve the state of rejuvenation, she should be at least 70 or 80 years old. So her age is definitely a lie. She is obviously a beautiful little girl. She has to say she is 28. Chu Qinghuang sighed. She also worked hard to marry her second brother. Nan 11's eyebrows were thoughtful. Lulu is a wonderful girl. Sometimes she is very smart, sometimes she is naive. Most of the time, she is in line with the optimism and kindness that a girl of this age should have. Occasionally she is so transparent that it is shocking. Leaving aside the use of force, none of us here are her opponents, Chu Qinghuang said calmly. She can see everyone's past and future. With this alone, she can go to any country to become a national. The masters will all be enshrined by the kings and dignitaries. As soon as these words came out, Nan 11 was slightly surprised. Everyone's past and future. Chu Qinghuang's face softened as she thought of what Lulu said, but the more people see it, the more they may treat these things indifferently. They may even think that it is as common as eating and drinking, and there is nothing strange about it. When Lulu told them these things, there was no sense of mystery at all, not even pretentiousness. It showed that she had been calm for a long time, but she still had to be careful in the future and not go out and talk nonsense, so as not to get into trouble. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 639. In the new room, Rongzhan looked at Lulu sitting on the edge of the bed. Do you think we should have the wedding tonight, or wait until we return to Dongling and hold a formal wedding before the wedding? Lulu sat upright on the edge of the bed. I listen to you. Rongzhan was confused. Let's wait until we get back to Dongling. How can the king of war hold such a beautiful woman in his arms? A voice came from outside the window, and something was handed in through the open window. This is a wedding gift from your uncle, you don't need to thank me. Rongzhan was puzzled. He walked to the window and picked up the brochure. When he opened it and took a look, his handsome face turned red and he almost threw the brochure out. What is this? He turned around to look, but fortunately Lulu's face was hidden under the hijab and he saw nothing. Rongzhan held the pamphlet like a hot potato in his hand, not knowing whether to throw it out or. Rongzhan, what are you doing? Lulu asked. What did Uncle Xie give you? No. It's nothing. Rongzhan hid the book behind his back and walked to the bed step by step. You sit down for a while, I'll go out and make a toast, and I'll be back soon. Lulu said, you go first. The groom does need to toast on the wedding day, but. Rongzhan quickly walked to the outer hall, opened the book and looked at it. The more he looked at it, the more he blushed. After flipping through it randomly, he found a place and stuffed it in. Then he straightened his expression and turned back to the inner room. Lulu heard his footsteps and couldn't help but want to lift the hijab. Why are you back again? Rongzhan quickly reached out to stop her movement and said calmly, I think I should stay here with you. There are no outsiders outside. They are all family members and don't care about these false courtesy. Lulu groaned, "Are you going to lift my hijab now?" Yes. Rongzhan turned around to look, took 11 sheng over, lifted her red hijab, and revealed her bright and charming face under the hijab. The girl, who was already bright and charming, now had makeup added to her face, making her look even more delicate, beautiful, and radiant. Lulu raised his eyes and looked at Rongzhan. Their eyes met, and there was a silent and charming aura flowing. "What should we do now?" Lulu lowered his eyes shyly. "It's not dark yet." "I wish the bride and groom to have a son soon," Xiejin said leisurely outside, with a lazy and joking voice. "A spring night is worth 1,000 gold, so don't waste it. The king of war is not young anymore, so hurry up and give birth to a little prince." Rongzhan's face turned green. He lifted his hijab and put it aside, turned around and walked to the window, opened it and looked over. "Uncle Jin, can you go a little further? A few words about his age. Is he really that old?" "You kid is really ignorant." Xiejin leaned against a big tree. "Originally, you should have 11 niang when you get married. 11 niang will remind you what the process is in the new house, but this is Canyon Mountain and outsiders are not allowed to enter. I'm here to act as a matchmaker for you, so you should thank me properly." Rongzhan frowned and muttered, "I've never been married, how do I know what the process is? Didn't I come to remind you?" Rongzhan secretly thought, since you don't look straight all day long, who knows which sentence is true and which sentence is false. After closing the window, Rongzhan returned to the inner room, thinking about what the details of getting married were. His eyes fell on the bed, and he reached out to lift the quilt. Sure enough, he saw peanuts, dates, and longans on the bed. He packed up all these things, cleaned the pillows and quilts, and then turned to look at Lulu. "Are you hungry?" "I'm not hungry." Lulu looked at the dates in his hand. "You want me to eat these?" No. Rongzhan put all the things he packed up on the tray. "These are metaphors, not for eating." Lulu groaned, his eyes falling on Rongzhan's face. "Uncle Rongzhan is so good looking. There are so many good looking people here, I can't even place them in the queue." "No," Lulu insisted, "in my eyes, Uncle Rongzhan is the most beautiful." After saying that, she thought carefully and asked, "Should I change my words? Call me brother Rongzhan." "Rongzhan. Husband." Rongzhan's face trembled. "You can just call me by my name. Didn't you start calling me by name today?" Oh. Lulu was silent. "My name is Lulu, you can call me Zhan Zhan." "Zhan Zhan?" Rongzhan's mouth twitched again, and he suddenly wanted to open her little head to see what was inside. But in the end, he just sighed helplessly. "Okay, whatever you want." Lulu lowered his eyebrows and looked at his hands, and said nervously, "Then let's." Rongzhan looked at the sky outside. "It's not dark yet." Lulu's voice paused, then he said silently, and said no more. According to the general marriage process, the groom should not stay in the room at this time, but should go out to entertain the guests. But today the people who officiated the wedding were all members of his own family. The family was having a meal together, so there was no need for Rongzhan to go out specially for a toast, but it was not bedtime yet, so the two of them stayed in the new house together, and the atmosphere was inevitably a bit awkward. "Are you hungry?" Rongzhan asked again. Lulu nodded. So Rongzhan quickly sent someone out to get some food. He had not eaten much since he had been busy in the morning, so he could fill his stomach quietly at this time. The servants quickly brought a sumptuous meal. Rongzhan and Lulu sat at the table. Before they started eating, another leisurely voice came from outside, "Eat more. Only when you are full can you have strength." Rongzhan took a deep breath. "You eat first, I'll go out for a while." Lulu said oh and nodded obediently. Rongzhan got up and walked out. He walked directly to a big tree in the courtyard and looked up at Xiejin lying between the branches. "What does Uncle Jin want to do? Prince Zhan has never been married." "I'm not worried that you don't have experience," so I came here to give you some advice. I don't intend to disturb your bridal chamber. Xiejin frowned. Good intentions are not rewarded. Real kindness or fake kindness, they both know it well. Rongzhan directly negotiated the conditions. Uncle Jin, let me go today. When I return to Dongling, I can train for Uncle Yao for a month and let my brother give him a month's vacation. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. Is this an inducement? Did you get it? Xiejin thought seriously for a while and nodded slowly. Since King Zhan doesn't need my advice, I won't be disliked here. King Zhan is so sincere, and as an uncle, I will naturally know what's good for him. Rongzhan said, thank you, Uncle Jin. Xiejin sighed and jumped down from the tree in a cool manner. Just now, when I saw King Zhan coming out angrily, I thought you were going to fight me to death. Rongzhan was silent for a moment. Where my father is, I dare not bully the big. He really wanted to fight him to death, but today is a big day, so he won't make a big move. But Xiejin patted his shoulder and said with a smile, goodbye. Rongzhan watched his back and snorted coldly. He said he would give Uncle Yao a vacation, but he didn't say he would give Uncle Jin a vacation. Since you teased him like this today, let him be busy for a month. Rongzhan made a decision in his heart and turned back to the bridal chamber. Seeing Lulu sitting at the table waiting for him, Rongzhan remembered that he had not taken off the phoenix crown on her head. Isn't this phoenix crown heavy? Rongzhan reached out to take it off. Are you tired? Lulu looked at him with her cheek in her hand. Not bad. Not bad. Rongzhan put the phoenix crown back and turned around to stare at her slender neck. I was worried that I would break your neck. How can my neck be so fragile? Lulu picked up some food for him. What gift did Uncle Xiejin give you? Why didn't I see it? Rongzhan's expression froze, and then he sat down next to her calmly. His gift is not valuable, nothing to see. Lulu said, oh, but didn't care. Instead, she looked up at him. After returning to Dongling, should I not be so reckless? Why? Lulu pouted. You are Prince Dongling, the royal family seems to have many strict rules. Rongzhan raised his eyebrows. Since you know this, why are you still clamoring to marry me? Who is clamoring to marry you? Don't flatter yourself. Lulu raised her hand, pretending to hit him. It's obviously me who came to save your lonely life. Rongzhan raised his lips. So, I have to thank you. Of course. Lulu looked at him fiercely. Why don't you thank me quickly? Rongzhan was silent for a moment. Call me husband first. Lulu paused. Husband? What? Rongzhan raised his eyebrows. Don't dare. Who doesn't dare? Lulu cleared her throat and said two words stiffly to the air. Husband. Who are you calling? Rongzhan frowned. Look at me. Lulu turned her head to look at him, and when she saw his handsome face that was so handsome that it made people and gods angry, her heart was beating wildly. Well, let me get used to it for a while before I can say it. Shy, Rongzhan teased her. Before, you were clamoring to. Are you annoying? Lulu stopped smiling and looked at him expressionlessly. Do you want to kneel on the washboard? Rongzhan was slightly stunned. Washboard? What is this? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 640. The next morning, Rongzhan and Lulu got up to serve tea to their parents. Rongyu and Nan 11 handed each of them a red envelope. When you get married, you are the head of the family. You must be responsible as a husband. No matter what you do outside, you need to consider the position of your wife at home. Rongyu said in a calm tone. Emotionally, there is no room for messing around. Rongzhan listened respectfully. Yes, I would like to listen to my father's instructions. Lulu also thanked him. But Rongzhan was in his 30s after all, and he didn't need to be taught a lesson like a child, so Rongyu didn't say anything more and quickly ended the process. After serving tea, the family had breakfast together. After the meal, Lulu suddenly looked at Fu Dange, sister-in-law. Fu Dange was taking care of his daughter. Hearing this, he raised his eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" "I have something to tell my sister-in-law." Lulu glanced at the people at the table, and quickly turned his eyes back to Fu Dange's face. "Speak alone." After the words fell, Xian Yuanhao and Rong Zhan both raised their heads. Although Fu Dange was puzzled, he quickly agreed, "Okay." Lulu raised his hand and assured, "Brother, don't worry, I just want to say a few words to my sister-in-law. There is absolutely no malice." Xian Yuanhao laughed, "I didn't suspect you had any malicious intent." Lulu took Fu Dange out mysteriously. "Except for Nan 11, everyone in this big family is a master." Lulu was worried about being overheard by them, so he walked further away to ensure that no one would hear their conversation, and then he found a stone and sat down. "The scenery here is so beautiful. Is it my first time for my sister-in-law to come to Kangyuan Mountain?" Fu Dange hummed, put aside the dignity and elegance that he had maintained in the palace for a long time, and sat next to her. "It's lucky to come here once. Once a woman enters the palace, some will never be able to leave the palace in her whole life, let alone travel a long distance. So far away. Not to mention the queen, even among the emperors of the past dynasties, how many of them could leave the palace and leave the imperial city at will? Brother Huang is very kind to his sister-in-law." Fu Dange was startled, then nodded slowly, his eyebrows softening. "The emperor is a very good man. Whether he is an emperor, a husband, or a father, he is perfect. So perfect that she often wakes up in the middle of the night, always feeling like she's not good enough for him." "Sister-in-law, are you still suffering from nightmares all these years?" Fu Dange's expression changed. "You know." You can see that Lulu's smile was like a clear breeze, making people unconsciously let down their guard. "But sister-in-law, there is no need to worry, it was just a nightmare, not something that really happened." Fu Dange looked into the distance in silence. "If you talk about such a nightmare, it will only make people feel ridiculous. Brother Huang brought his sister-in-law to Kangyuan Mountain not just to visit his father and mother, but more because he wanted you to see the trust, ease and warmth of their family getting along together." Lulu's voice was calm. "A scene like this is rare in an imperial home." Fu Dange nodded, "It is indeed rare. They can accept many things that are different from the worldly world. They are far more open-minded than you think. They have a broad mind and a far-reaching vision, just like the vast mountains in front of them." Lulu looked far away. "They can accept many things that ordinary people cannot accept. Just like you don't know why your sister is the Empress of Ziki, why your father has loved your mother for decades, and why you have so much power. Most of the characters are loyal to their father." Fu Dange remained silent. Lulu turned to look at her, his voice carrying a natural soothing magic. "There are so many problems in the world, many of which cannot be answered. Everyone has their own secret, and this secret does not necessarily have to be known to others, but when you are tortured by the secret, you should actually choose to share it with the person you love and trust most." Fu Dange was silent for a moment. "I told him once before." "But you are still troubled by nightmares." Lulu frowned. "This is not good, it will compromise your happiness. Even if the emperor stays with you for the rest of your life, you will always feel uneasy in your heart." Fu Dange shook his head. "The reason why I am panicked is not because I doubt him. It's not important." Lulu said the key point. "Brother Huang loves you and is willing to do everything to make you happy. If your happiness and security are compromised, his efforts have been compromised." "Discount?" Fu Dange was slightly shocked. "I now tell my sister-in-law clearly that everything that appeared in your dream is false and will never happen. Brother Huang is also a blessed person. His life will be as stable and smooth as Dongling Shirji until the end of his life. This fate has been determined and will not change." Fu Dange raised his eyes slightly, with obvious emotion in his eyes. "Really, it won't change?" "Real." As these two words fell, Fu Dange suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, as if the string that had been tied for a long time suddenly relaxed, and he felt a little tired for a moment. Looking quietly into the distance, she said sincerely, "Lulu, thank you. We are all one family, you're welcome." Lulu smiled cleanly and brightly. "When I get back to Dongling, if someone bullies me, my sister-in-law just remember to make the decision for me." Fu Dange laughed, feeling more relaxed than ever. "Okay. I will make the decision for you." After finishing Rongzhan's marriage, it was time to say goodbye. Government affairs were busy. As the kings of the two countries, Chu Qinghuang and Xian Yuanhao, could not stay outside for too long. On the 6th day of March, they decided to return home. Should Qinzi and Dongzhi stay in Kangyun Mountain for a while? Xian Yuanhao shook his head. "Qinzi has coursework to attend to, and Dongzhi is young. Staying here will only disturb Jinyu. I don't dare to distract my father and mother." "It's not that serious," Fu Dange said with a smile. "Actually, I can't bear to part with Dongzhi. She is now my caring little cotton-padded jacket. I point to her to relieve my boredom on weekdays." "Okay." Nan 11 touched Dongzhi's head. "If you want to come and play in the future, let your father and mother bring you over." "Grandma, I will miss you." Dongzhi kissed her face and turned to look at Rongyu. "Grandpa, I will miss you too." Rongyu reached out and touched her. "Be good." Only Jinyu was sitting in her grandfather's arms, waving her little hands to her parents. "If you miss me, come and see me." "You little heartless kid, why didn't you say go back and see us?" Jinyu said seriously. "My grandfather and grandmother are old and have to stay in the mountains. Traveling long distances is too hard." Xian Yuanhao was puzzled. Both Fukang and Nuan have dull temperaments. Why is Jinyu so good at talking? Fukang had his identity changed since he was a child. Otherwise, who knows if he would be so good at coaxing others? Chu Qinghuang chuckled. Maybe Jinyu would have followed him. Fukang nodded secretly. Nuan was right. If he hadn't had his identity changed since he was a child, had all his emotions and desires wiped out in the dark pavilion, and had been trained for so many years, he would probably be just like that fool Wei Chuang. If so, it might be a blessing for him to have his identity changed. "Father and mother, please take care of yourself." Chu Qinghuang turned to Rongyu and Nan 11. "When Jinyu can take charge of her own business, Fukang and I will abdicate and come to Kangyun Mountain to serve our parents." Nan 11 laughed. "Why are you so melancholy all of a sudden? If you and Fukang have a good life, we will be satisfied. Why do we need you to serve us?" In the lives of one generation after another, parents are always the most concerned about their children. Fortunately, each of their children can take care of themselves, which saves them a lot of worries. After saying goodbye to the two elders, Chu Qinghuang, Fukang, Xian Yuanhao and Fu Dange walked down the mountain together. Time flies so fast. Xiejin stood on the mountain and watched the group of young people drifting away. In a blink of an eye, the sons have grown up and the grandchildren have grown up. Time is not forgiving. Xian Yuanyao nodded. "Yes. Yao Yao has been with me for so many years, have you ever regretted it?" Xiejin tilted his head to look at him. Xian Yuanyao frowned. "Every time I see other people's children in groups, I regret very much that I chose you, the one who can't have children." Xiejin's mouth twitched. "Can you say something nice? You don't like hearing this, but you still want to ask me." Xian Yuanyao glared at him. "So many years have passed, and now you ask me these, don't you find it boring?" Xiejin sighed. "I shouldn't have." They have endured inner suffering, faced rumors, and overcome many obstacles. It is indeed not easy for them to be together for so many years. How many people had doubted that their relationship would not last long, and that after the fresh excitement of youth, sooner or later they would be defeated by worldly judgment and criticism, but Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao used their time to refute everyone's doubts. "We have to go back tomorrow." Xiejin turned around and walked up the mountain. Rongzhan said that after he goes back, he will train for you for a month. Then I will take a leave of absence from the emperor and accompany you to visit my father-in-law. How about it? Xian Yuanyao was surprised. For a month. Xiejin nodded. What did you do to him again? It's nothing, Xiejin said calmly, I just went to have a wedding on the night of his wedding. Xian Yuanyao had a strange expression. You are an elder, why are you so embarrassed when you go to a junior's room to cause trouble? Xiejin shrugged, it's not really a big deal, I still have some sense of propriety. Xian Yuanyao said nothing more. It's time to go back and take a look. My lord has become a grandfather, and the two elders in the family are getting older. I'm really a little uneasy. Although his younger brother Xian Yuanhui is guarding him, he is still in two places, so it is inevitable to worry about him. The group of people arrived at the foot of the mountain, and when it was time to actually part ways, Xian Yuanhao looked at Chu Qinghuang and said with some reluctance, take care. Chu Qinghuang nodded, feeling a little sad for a moment, brother, please take care of yourself. Fukang Xian Yuanhao patted his shoulder, not knowing what to say, Nuan is left to you. Fukang nodded calmly and said, senior brother, don't worry. Xian Yuanhao frowned, why are you still called senior brother? Fukang pursed his lips and narrowed his eyes, brother, don't worry. Yes, Xian Yuanhao turned around and ordered the accompanying maid to help Dan Ji and his daughter onto the carriage, and then he got on the horse. Xian Yuanhao waved his hand, and the team left in a mighty manner. Chu Qinghuang turned to look at the mountain. Her father and mother were no longer there. She sighed, I suddenly walked away from two families. I wonder if my father and mother will not be used to it. The second emperor brother and his wife will stay up there for a few more days and spend more time with master and mistress. Fukang comforted, and with Jin Yu here, master and mistress will not be deserted. Chu Qinghuang nodded, that's right. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao planned to leave with Rongzhan in order to let Rongyu and Nan 11 adapt to the sudden desertion. Chu Qinghuang and Fukang got on their horses and flicked the reins, let's go.